Hey everyone, in today's episode, I'm going to discuss the Melbourne property market and give you an update of all the regions. So the reason I do this is because I'd argue it is the most searched and in-demand market at the moment in the country by far. And I don't think a lot of people actually know what's going on in the wider scheme of things in terms of the market. So in today's episode, I'll get into a few things. First things first, where we're at in the market. Secondly, what's driving the market. Thirdly, the region market conditions. So that's specific regions I look in Melbourne and the market conditions that they have. And then finally, the best regions to buy in. Look, where we're really at today is pretty much here. So if you just look to the bottom of the screen here, this is from my property clock episode for the October, should I say. It's only come out a little while ago. So Melbourne has obviously passed the 6 o'clock mark in terms of the property market. And you'll see there it is genuinely starting to heat up quite a bit. And I think for people that have been in the market, you'll probably know this now. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of the wider scope of things. To get into specifically the regions that I look at, this is where we're really at for the Melbourne market. So you'll see here, inner west, inner city, inner east, southeast, and eastern suburbs have already all broken that sort of, should I say, 6 o'clock mark. So they're genuinely starting to trend up now. Reason for that being is it's just simply too cheap, and I mean, good locations, got everything going for them. And I mean, yes, people say, the government is crap, and I don't disagree with you in that sense, but I mean, it's still Melbourne at the end of the day. So that's the reason. And then you've obviously got, as you can see here as well, the inner north and Bayside just lagging there as well. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of the Melbourne market today. No surprises there. I think everyone who's watched my episodes is actually seeing what's happening on the ground. That shouldn't surprise them at all. So that's really where we're at in the Melbourne market. To just give everyone a quick summary. Look, to give everyone an idea of what's driving the market, first things first, it's affordability. And a lot of people will argue with me and probably argue the point of affordability. And now I'm not saying affordability necessarily for everyone. It's particularly for the upper middle class and affluent class of people. So you've got particularly a lot of Sydney-siders buying in markets like Melbourne at the moment, who see it as very cheap. You got even people from Brisbane that see Melbourne as cheap as well, because a comparative suburb in Brisbane is like literally nearly 30 to 50% more expensive than Melbourne now, which is crazy. So that's what I mean by affordability. It is affordable for the upper middle and affluent buyers, 100%. Secondly, the 5% deposit scheme and rate declines. Why the 5% deposit scheme has affected Melbourne is because it's underlined everything under $1 million is very hot at the moment in Melbourne. Rate declines are helping the top end of the market. So you generally have rates affect the Melbourne market itself. With a 5% deposit scheme, it's affecting it to a larger scope at the bottom. That's kind of what's going on there. So that's really another thing that is largely driving the, should I say, Melbourne property market. Not only that too, very low stock levels are another thing. So what's actually going on here in the Melbourne market as well is, I mean, if you take it back even like 6 to 9 months, you would have seen probably double to triple the amount of stock on market at any given point in time. Now that sounds, I guess, like something crazy, but the reason it drops very quickly is because you have a longer holding period in terms of days on market when the actual market is slow. So you might have an average of 45 to 60 days on market, hypothetically, and that's dropping to like 40, for example, now, right? Now, when that happens, what happens is, because it's dropped so quickly, more properties are selling, therefore the stock becomes lower. And also you get vendors expecting higher prices at the same time, and a lot holding on to it, waiting for prices to go up even further. So that's the reason you got very low stock levels. Large demand is another thing. And I've put employment and immigration. So, why I say large demand, this ties into affordability with employment, because Sydney and Melbourne hold 39 of the top 50 ASX companies. In Australia, and 6 of the top 50 are resources companies. So I wouldn't even count them in the industries that I would consider, because don't get me wrong, it's not that resources don't matter. It's just a very kind of, like, should I say, volatile industry. So it's not like volatility isn't really something you really want in a high growth market. You want longer term growth and you want, should I say, sustainability. So, I mean, if you take those 6 out, you've only really got 44 left, which means 39 of the top 44 are really in Sydney and Melbourne. So when you've got Sydney, for example, being literally more than double the price of Melbourne at the moment for a comparative good suburb, that's why there's so much demand on Melbourne. And to add to that, immigration as well. Now, sure, people don't like saying it, but it's just the truth. Most of the immigrants who come into Australia go to Sydney and Melbourne. That's where they go. And for the reason of employment, that's the reason they go there. So don't be surprised why demand is so high. That is simply the reason. It's because of large demand for employment there and also immigration, which is fueling lower stock levels. To add to this, finally, falling vacancy rates. So the trend line of vacancy rates for actually probably the last 18 months or so has actually been fairly stable. It's, fairly even supply and demand in terms of people actually coming in and out of that market, should I say the rental market. That trend line has just broken in the last month or two, and it's starting to fall again. So rents are going to rise quite substantially, I'd say, over the next foreseeable 12 to 24 months, I'd think, it's not really good thing for renters, but I mean, this is just what it is. So these are the main factors that are really driving the Melbourne property market at the moment. So no surprises there. So I'll get into the actual parts of the Melbourne market at the moment. So I'll start with my favourite one at the moment, and that is the inner west of Melbourne. Just to be transparent, there's really no bargains left at all in this market. There was a few months ago. They are all gone now. Flippers are coming back in a big way in this market. No surprises there. There are a lot of cottages that are very easy to develop. Properties located near village town centres doing exceptionally well, and also large family dwellings are doing well. So it's not only the village and town centres, but they are doing well, but your good family dwellings also away from them are doing well as well. Just has to suit where you're buying. Accessibility and facilities are driving great rental growth as well. People, if they can get to where a good lifestyle triangle is, the distance it takes to go to work, to school, and lifestyle precincts and back home, if that number's short, it is driving tenants crazy in Melbourne. Price points in the West below $1 million are very hot. It's very hard to pick up a good dwelling under $1 million now. There are still some, but not the same quality that was a couple of months ago. There's been some very strong opportunities, results in Yarraville, West Footscray and Braybrook. So I've seen properties sell well above $1 million in Braybrook, $2 million in Yarraville, and above 1.5 in West Footscray recently. That trend is going to continue and only get higher. But this is why flippers are back in the market. There's great opportunities in properties that need work. So plenty of properties that need just simple, painting, maybe just redo the flooring. You could even just do floating floorboards. You could do possibly vinyl flooring and maybe a paint range hood, maybe as well change a cooker. Very simple jobs. All of that stuff really is, I'd say, quite easy to do, and they're good opportunities still in the inner west. So that's my summary of the inner west market in Melbourne at the moment. Let's get into the inner city. Strong demand from high-end professionals, many interstate buyers in this market, particularly from Sydney. Again, there's no surprises here. This is right next to all the jobs, the inner city, especially the white-collar, higher-end jobs. And a lot of Sydney-siders are looking at it now because comparative suburbs like Paddington in Sydney are like $3.5 million, and you can pick these up for like 1.5 or even less sometimes. Large interior dwellings doing well, and off-street parking dwellings are selling for $250K plus more. So the inner city is actually very hard to have an off-street park. So if your dwelling has one, they're generally selling for at least $250,000 more now. It sounds crazy, but it's just what is going on kind of there as well. Plenty of potential for upside through cosmetic renovations. A lot of these homes here are structurally very sound. They're very, very well built, stood since generally the 1890s to early 1900s, and nothing really goes wrong with them if they're maintained. So a lot of your older people that sell them, that you can pick ones up that need a bit of work, but they're very good in saying that. Strong sales in both Clifton Hill and Fitzroy North. There's some very, very big sales here, going for well over 2.5 million, some for even more, and that's going to continue as well. Opportunity in neighbouring suburbs, and particularly strong demand in under $1.2 million, the under $1.2 million range. So, I mean, there are neighbouring, I'd say, bridesmaids here that will do quite well. And especially if you can pick it up under 1.2, you're going to do very well here as well. So that's where we're at. There is a lot of demand here as well, again, but that's the inner city market. Let's get into the inner east. So, I mean, I wrote this as eastern suburbs in my property clock, but I'm really talking about the inner east. So that's really kind of, I'd say, probably Kew down to probably, should I say, Hawthorn East / Kooyong out to probably Burwood and up to, I'd say, probably the outskirts of Box Hill, sort of Blackburn there. That's probably the furthest you call the inner east. It's probably Box Hill is the max. The market really is past the 6 o'clock market and it's moving towards a stronger market. So money is flowing back into here, and it's because the strong demand from established families close to prestigious schools, and particularly it is very underpriced compared to comparable Sydney and Brisbane suburbs. So Sydney suburbs, the inner east here, would be like $4 to $6 million. In Brisbane, it would probably be 2 to 3 now, a comparative suburb of most inner east suburbs I'm talking about here. Now, in saying that, like, these have a long way to go, and historically, a lot of these suburbs have done 9.5 to 10% growth. Some have even done above 10, to give you an idea. There's quite good opportunity in bridesmaid suburbs surrounding the higher end. So where I'm talking about really is the ones that surround particularly your top end of these markets, particularly your Deep Dean, Camberwell, Canterbury, those sorts of markets, and you can name a few others as well. And it's because there's been strong performance in Balwyn and Hawthorn East. Now, I was speaking about Hawthorn East about 6 months ago, saying there's very, very good opportunities in that market. For everyone that didn't listen, you have missed at least probably $200,000 worth of growth if you did not listen to me, use me, and actually buy in that actual suburb, because the market has moved quite substantially there. I was talking about that a fair while ago. But anyway, that's the inner east of Melbourne. Let's get into the inner south and southeast. So very wealthy buyers are coming back into the market, particularly strong demand along prestigious streets and the Bayfront. So, I mean, this is really your most, I'd say, expensive part of the market, including some parts of the inner east, but particularly around your Albert Park, Middle Park, Chirac, Kooyong, that sort of area is genuinely your best parts of, should I say, the whole of Melbourne. There are quite wealthy people who buy here, and they're genuinely coming back in the market because they can see what's happening. Developers are back in the market too for the very tightly held development stock, and there's very strong demand also in walkable neighbourhoods in this area as well. So, I mean, that's kind of what's going on here. I mean, no surprises there. Like, it's a very, very good market to buy, and just in saying that. So that's kind of what's going on there. There's also, should I say, great opportunity in village-like neighbourhoods, particularly by doing cosmetic and minor renovations. So what am I talking about? Your Windsors, probably your Balaclava, probably your St Kilda East. All of these areas are smaller lots, but I mean, you've got plenty of dwellings here that you can do little renovations to and make quite a lot of money by doing so. So that's another good opportunity in saying that. There's been quite strong results in Caulfield North, Elstonwick and Middle Park in the last month or two. There's been some quite substantial sales going above the $5 million mark in this time period. That's going to continue as well. What happens is, when you have some substantial sales, the higher end generally start to list their properties on the market, and it'll almost look like a massive bounce in the suburb median. And that's because the higher end of the market actually starts to list their properties. So that's really what's going on in the inner south and southeast in the Melbourne market at the moment. Let's get into the bay side of Melbourne. Now, easy thing to say is market is definitely past the 6 o'clock market now on the bay side. So what's really going on here is that, I mean, the market itself, it did actually do fairly well in COVID times because of the ridiculous lockdowns in Melbourne. There's now very strong demand also in, should I say, bridesmaid suburbs and suburbs along transport lines here. Not all suburbs actually did well in that time. There's some that I've been mentioning that I'd say are great opportunities. Particularly original lots on 500 metres squared plus are doing well, and there's still great opportunities in these originals in bridesmaid suburbs. So, I mean, don't get fooled. These areas are very much so in demand. but people are noticing it now. There's some suburbs here that didn't do that much over that time that historically have done above 9.5% growth. So that's another thing just to notice in the Bayside here. There's fierce competition sub $1.3 million. It's actually getting quite hard to find now in the Bayside. I mean, I was picking up stuff, I kid you not, in like Bentley East for like $1.1 to $1.2 million. No kidding. Like maybe 6 to 12 months ago. Actually even 3 to be honest. So those are all gone. They don't exist anymore. You can still slide in just under 1.3 in the right suburb. Actually, you can buy down towards 1.1 or so, but in a little bit of a worse suburb, but that's just kind of where the market's at. There's been strong sales similar to the inner southeast and south in Hampton, Brighton East and Moorabbin. Moorabbin is a suburb that I was mentioning quite a lot, saying it's very underpriced. It's still underpriced in my opinion, but it's not as underpriced as it was probably 3 to 6 months ago. It's because people caught on to that it was very underpriced and the opportunity that they could see in that market. So, that's kind of what's been going on in the Bayside. Great opportunities still in that. I'd still consider buying there, to be honest, if you had the money. So that's kind of where we're at in the Bayside. Look, to close up, the inner north is the final region that I do buy in still in Melbourne, and what's kind of going on there at the moment is it's further gentrifying from an upper middle class region. So parts of the inner north you could argue are working class and probably just standard, suburbs. They're definitely further gentrifying to upper middle class regions now. And developers and flippers are starting to re-enter the market. So I know a developer here that holds more than 30 blocks up here where he's just waiting for it to burst and then he's going to start developing them all. So they're coming right back into the market, these guys. Stock above 300 metres squared in inner markets is doing well, and above 500 metres squared in outer suburbs is doing well as well. It's quite hard to find these, and there's quite a intense competition for that because people buying this know they can do quite a bit to them. Off-street parking again is in strong demand, and this is probably more so for your inner north suburbs. 3+ bedroom dwellings are becoming harder to source for reasonable prices. Families do like living here. But really what's going on is most of the dwellings are your standard 2-bedders, and the ones that are on bigger blocks are being bought by developers and flipped into 2 by 1 bedroom townhouses or things similar to that, just with not enough real space for a family. So that's why they're in quite strong demand. The strong demand sub 1.2, it is very hard to find something good for under 1.2 in the suburbs I target very heavily. Mind you can still pick up stuff at around 900k in sort of the outer inner north. Easily, you can around 900k, or in the best streets, probably 950 if you're very lucky. But that's where it's kind of at. There's been some very strong results in Brunswick and Northcote lately. Brunswick East, should I say. Northcote's had a number of sales above 2 million. Brunswick East has had it as well. What I'd say is as well, you're going to start to see suburbs like Heidelberg Heights and Heidelberg West. So that's in your probably outer part of your inner north, where you'll start to see the development lots start to sell for a lot more money because they're starting to develop them now. And there's actually quite a lot going on there. So expect probably my next Melbourne genuine market update to say possibly a Heidelberg Heights or Heidelberg West. Particular pockets have started to pick up a lot because a lot is starting to go on there as well. So really where we're at now is what the best places to buy in Melbourne are. And I'm just going to do it at 3 different price points or a couple of different price points because I think it's important. So sub 1 million really, your best is really the Maribyrnong Council region, Hobsons Bay and the eastern side of Brimbank. For under 1 specifically, Maribyrnong and some suburbs, particularly your Spotswoods, your South Kingsville and Newport are quite good for under 1 million in Hobsons Bay and Maribyrnong. Why I've said the eastern side of Brimbank is because around Sunshine, the suburbs surrounding that, there are still opportunities that are very close to $750,000. You can probably still pick it up. For easily sub 850, definitely around the 800 mark is still achievable. And they're very good properties to buy in that as well. So, these properties here are really the cheap of the cheap for what you'll get in Melbourne at the moment. So that's really my picks of the areas to buy. I'd say your sub $1 million. If I'm going under 1.25, I'd say it'd be Hobsons Bay, the inner north and inner city. Now, yes, you can buy Maribyrnong for that, but I'd try to get it for probably under 1.1 in that region if you can. Like if you're spending 1.25, you'd probably want to get in at probably Hobson's Bay, the better part. So it'd probably be in Newport, Williamstown, or somewhere like that. Very, very good buys if you can get in for something like that. The inner north as well. If you can get in the inner suburbs, the inner north, your Kensingtons, your Fitzroy North, your Alphington, your Clifton Hill, Richmond, all those sorts of areas in the inner city, should I say, as well. Brunswick, all those sorts of suburbs. You can get there for under 1.25. You're doing very well because they'll rent very highly. You'll probably easily for $3 better get $800 a week in a lot of those suburbs now. So very, very good in that if you can. So that's probably the pick for under 1.25 million. For under 1.5 million, I'd say your inner east, Bayside, and inner city. I mean, if you can get in your inner east in somewhere like Box Hill, which would be very hard, on Mont Albert North, I mean, you'd be doing very well in that for under 1.5. Bayside, 1.5 is very achievable in Bayside, but I mean, if anywhere between Cheltenham, kind of Moorabbin, right out to Brighton Eastern, or connect a triangle there, like anything between that. I mean, Bentley East as well. Still pretty good for all that sort of budget. Inner city, again, this is probably more your top end for under 1.5. So it's probably, I'd say, more your Clifton Hill, probably your Fitzroy North, Carlton North, and probably Cremorne for under 1.5. That's very good as well. Perform very well long-term and rent very well as well. So that's my pick for that. For under $2 million, I would specifically be only hitting, because if you're going above 1.5, I'd be only going inner south, southeast, and inner east. So when I talk about inner south, southeast, I'm talking about specifically your Port Melbourne are probably St Kilda West, St Kilda, up through to, I'd say, probably track, if you include Caulfield North as well, and just connect all those dots. Probably that region, that's doing very well. Inner east, I'm talking about the inner east. So, I mean, if you can get in anything in like Balwyn, Mont Albert, right into the really inner parts of the inner east for under 2, you're doing very well, because these are very much so wealthy areas in demand, and they're very tightly held long-term as well. So a lot of these are held by wealthy families, and they send their kids to the local, should I say, prestigious private schools here. So you're not going to find much stock here once the market picks up, because no one will sell, and they generally stay for a long time. So really, that's my update really of all the Melbourne areas I would buy in for those price points. So if you're someone serious about getting in the Melbourne market and you're looking for a buyer's agent, either to find you a very good investment or a place to live in, I strongly suggest you reach out via www.compoundinvest.com.au/inquire. Look, what happens here is you basically book a time in with me. It's done via email. It blocks out a time in both of our calendars of half an hour, and I give you a phone call to your mobile number. What happens is you will tell me what you're looking to do, what you're looking to achieve. I'll give you some options, and we formulate a strategy from there, and we actually get the purchase done. Now, even if you're not serious right now, let's say in 3 to 6 months, or you're someone sitting on the fence or have your reservations about buyer's agents, I get it, but I strongly suggest you still reach out, because you understand how much I care and how much I know about getting stuff done in these markets. And not only that too, I'd also tell you the strategy is more important than the purchase itself. If you don't know what you're looking to achieve, you're going to get the purchase wrong. I can't tell you how many times I've heard someone after the purchase reach out to me and say, do you think this is a good purchase? And I have to just tell them no, because you've bought in this area, and this, and this are wrong with the location that you've bought in. Like, you'd much rather buy a dwelling that can be fixed up in a very good location than a bad location and a good dwelling, because the location takes care of nearly everything, and most people stuff that up. I'd say 999 people out of 1,000 stuff that up. So again, anyone serious or looking to get in the market, www.compoundinvest.com.au/inquire. Look, I thank you all for watching and encourage you to subscribe to the channel if you like my video, and I'll see you on the next one.